Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching the stars through the large front window. The ship was huge, bigger than any battleship Earth had ever built before. Its dark metal hull stretched for 2 miles, covered with weapons and armor that could destroy entire planets. Jake had commanded the ship for 3 years, but he still felt amazed by its power every day. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the gentle beeping of monitors. Jake's crew worked at their stations, checking systems, and watching for any signs of danger. They were deep in space, far from Earth, on a routine patrol mission along the outer colonies. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at the communication station, her headset on as she listened to the usual radio chatter from nearby ships and stations. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Amy had learned to speak 12 different alien languages during her time in the Space Force. "Captain," Amy called out suddenly, her voice sharp with surprise. "I'm getting something strange on the emergency channel." Jake turned from the window and walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" Amy frowned at her screen, adjusting dials and pressing buttons. It's multiple alien signals, sir. All coming in at once, and they're using the old emergency codes from the war." Commander Danny Walsh looked up from his tactical display. Danny was Jake's second in command, a big man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in the Terran alien wars 20 years ago, just like Jake. "The emergency codes? Those haven't been used since the peace treaties." "Put it on the main speakers," Jake ordered. Amy pressed a button and suddenly the bridge filled with alien voices. The sounds were strange and harsh, nothing like human speech. Some were high and squeaky, others were deep and rumbling. All of them sounded desperate and afraid. "Can you translate any of it?" Jake asked. Amy worked quickly at her station, running the alien voices through the computer translation system. After a few minutes, words began to appear on the main screen. Jake read them out loud, his voice getting more serious with each sentence. "Help us. The Devourers have returned. Our fleets are destroyed. We beg Earth for aid." Danny walked over to stand next to Jake. "Sir, I'm seeing signals from the Xerian Dominion, the Corvani Republic, and the Braktar Empire. All the major powers are calling us." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. These were the same alien empires that had tried to destroy humanity during the wars. The Xerian Dominion had the biggest fleet in the galaxy. The Corvani Republic had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's. The Braktar Empire had warriors who were bred for fighting and knew no fear. If all 3 of these empires were asking Earth for help, something very bad was happening. Chief Engineer Lisa Parker came up from the engine room, her hands dirty with grease and her face worried. Lisa was small but tough, with red hair and green eyes. She could fix anything on the ship and often knew more about how it worked than the people who built it. "Captain, I've been monitoring the deep space sensors," Lisa said. "There's something big happening in the Xerian sector. The energy readings are off the charts." Amy suddenly straightened up in her chair. "Sir, I'm getting a direct transmission. It's coming through on a priority channel." "Put it through," Jake said. The main screen flickered, and then showed the face of an alien that Jake recognized. It was Ambassador Zexathara of the Velkan Empire. Her skin was blue-gray, with large black eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. During the war, she had been one of Earth's worst enemies. She had called humans primitive animals and said they should be slaves to the superior alien races. Now she looked terrified. "Captain Morrison," Zexathara said, her voice shaking. The Galactic Council sends this message to Earth. We need your help." Jake crossed his arms. "The last time we talked, Ambassador, you told me that humans were too stupid to deserve a place in the galaxy." Zexathara's large eyes filled with what might have been tears. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. Please, Captain, our pride means nothing now. The Devourers have awakened." Dr. Helen Carter, the ship's scientist who studied aliens, stepped forward. Helen was in her 40s, with brown hair starting to turn gray and kind eyes behind thick glasses. She knew more about alien history than almost any human alive. "The Devourers?" Helen said. "But they're just a legend. Ancient stories that aliens tell to scare their children? No, Zexathara said, her voice barely a whisper. They are real. They have been sleeping for 1,000,000 years, but something woke them up. They came from the dark space between galaxies. They consume everything, planets, stars, entire solar systems. Nothing can stop them. On the screen behind Zexathara, Jake could see other aliens. Some he recognized from the war. Proud warriors and brilliant scientists who had once looked down on humanity. Now they all looked broken and afraid. Our combined fleets attacked them first, Zexathara continued. The Xerion Dominion sent 200 battleships. The Corvani Republic used their smartest computer minds to plan the perfect attack. The Braktar Empire sent their finest warriors. All of them were destroyed in less than an hour. Commander Walsh shook his head. That's impossible. The Xerion fleet alone has more firepower than half the galaxy combined. The Devourers don't fight like anything we've ever seen, Zexathara said. They don't feel fear or pain. They can't be reasoned with or threatened. They just consume and grow stronger. Every ship they destroy becomes part of their swarm. Amy looked at her captain. Sir, I'm getting reports from all over the galaxy. Entire star systems going dark. Millions of ships sending out final distress calls before their signals just stop. Jake stared at the alien ambassador on the screen. 20 years ago, she had tried to have him executed as a war criminal. She had called humans savage beasts, who were too dangerous to be allowed to live. Now she was begging for his help. Why come to us? Jake asked. You have technology we can barely understand. Your ships are faster and stronger than ours. What makes you think humans can do what your empires couldn't? Zexathara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. Because you think differently than we do. During the war, we could never predict what humans would do next. You fought in ways that made no sense to us. You used tactics that our greatest military minds said were impossible. You turned defeats into victories through sheer stubbornness and creativity. She paused, looking directly at Jake through the screen. The Devourers are like us. They think logically, they follow patterns, they can be predicted. But humans are chaos. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. Maybe that chaos is what we need now. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Amy Rodriguez, who could speak to any alien in their own language. Danny Walsh, who had never lost a battle in 20 years of fighting. Lisa Parker, who could make broken machines work with spare parts and determination. Dr. Helen Carter, who understood alien minds better than the aliens themselves. They were just humans. They didn't have the best weapons or the fastest ships. But they had something else. Something that had helped them survive when the entire galaxy had tried to destroy them. They had each other, and they never gave up. Jake turned back to the screen. Send us the coordinates, Ambassador. The UES Titan is coming. For the first time since the transmission began, Zexathara's face showed hope. Thank you, Captain Morrison. Thank you. The transmission ended, and the bridge was quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet now. It was the quiet before a storm. Danny Walsh checked his weapon systems. Sir, should we call for backup from Earth? Jake shook his head. There's no time. If what the ambassador said is true, the Devourers will have consumed half the galaxy before reinforcements could get here. Amy looked up from her station. Captain, I'm plotting a course for the Xerion sector. At maximum speed, we can be there in 18 hours. Do it, Jake said. Then he pressed the button for the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We're going into battle against an enemy that has destroyed the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. I won't lie to you. This might be a one-way trip. He paused, looking out at the stars again. But somewhere out there, billions of people are dying. Alien people, yes, but people just the same. They have families and dreams just like we do. And right now, we're the only ones who can help them. Jake's voice grew stronger. We're going to show the galaxy what humans can do when they fight for something bigger than themselves. All stations, battle ready. Let's go save the universe. The UES Titan turned toward the distant stars and began to accelerate. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light. Ahead of them waited an enemy that had never been defeated. But Jake Morrison smiled as he watched his crew prepare for battle. The aliens were about to learn something that Earth had known for centuries. Humans were at their most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. As the UES Titan flew through space toward the Xerian sector, Captain Jake Morrison called his senior officers to the briefing room. The room was simple and practical, with a large table in the center and chairs around it. The walls showed starry maps and tactical displays. Commander Pete Johnson arrived first. Pete was the ship's war historian, an older man with white hair and many scars on his hands from his years as a fighter pilot. He carried a thick folder full of old reports and battle records. "You want to know about the war, don't you, Captain?" Pete said as he sat down. Jake nodded. "Our crew is young. Most of them weren't even born when we fought the aliens. They need to understand what we're dealing with." The other officers arrived and took their seats. Amy Rodriguez looked nervous. This would be her first real battle. Danny Walsh looked calm, but Jake could see the tension in his shoulders. Lisa Parker was already thinking about engineering problems, making notes on her tablet. Dr. Helen Carter had brought her alien history books. Pete opened his folder and pulled out old photographs. The pictures showed destroyed spaceships, burning planets, and human soldiers with tired faces. 20 years ago, Pete began, Earth tried to join the Galactic Council peacefully. We sent diplomats with gifts and trade offers. We wanted to be friends. He put a picture on the table. It showed a human diplomat shaking hands with an alien leader. Both were smiling. That lasted about a week. Pete continued. The aliens saw us as primitives. They thought we were too stupid and violent to be part of their civilization. They offered to let us be slaves. When we said no, they decided to destroy us. Amy looked at the pictures. But how did we survive? They had better ships and weapons than we did. Pete smiled grimly. That's where Captain Susan Blake comes in. She was commanding the UES Defiant, one of our first real warships. The aliens sent tax collectors to a human colony called New Texas. They wanted the colonists to give them half of everything they owned. He put another picture on the table. It showed a woman in a captain's uniform standing in front of a damaged spaceship. She looked determined and angry. Captain Blake told the aliens to go to hell, Pete said. When they threatened to attack the colony, she put her ship between them and the planet. One human ship against an entire alien battle group. Dr. Carter leaned forward. I've read about this battle. The aliens had 12 ships. How did she win? She didn't fight fair, Pete said. The aliens expected a normal space battle, ships lining up firing at each other until one side gave up. Instead, Blake used her ship like a battering ram. She flew straight at the alien flagship and rammed it. Commander Walsh whistled softly. That's insane. Both ships should have been destroyed. They were, Pete said. But Blake's crew had escape pods ready. Most of them survived. The alien crew didn't expect the ramming attack, so they weren't prepared. Blake took out their command ship and confused the rest of their fleet. Pete pulled out more pictures, showing space battles with strange tactics, human ships hiding behind asteroids using nuclear mines, turning cargo ships into bombs. The aliens learned something that day, Pete continued. Humans don't fight like other species. Most aliens see war as a game with rules. You line up your ships, you fire your weapons, and the side with better technology wins. But humans grew up fighting each other. We learned that there are no rules in a real fight. Communications officer Tony Martinez had joined them. Tony was young, maybe 23, with dark skin and bright eyes. He was good at breaking alien communication codes. Sir, Tony said, I've been listening to old alien radio messages from the war. Want to hear what they said about us? Pete nodded, so Tony pressed a button on his tablet. Alien voices filled the room, harsh and clicking sounds. Then the computer translated the words. The humans fight like wild animals. They have no honor. They use tricks and lies. They turn everything into a weapon. Tony played another message. Human ship detected in asteroid field. Wait, the asteroids are moving. Those aren't rocks, they're bombs. The humans turned the entire asteroid field into a weapon. Amy looked amazed. How did we do that? Lisa Parker answered. My grandfather was an engineer in the war. He told me stories. The humans would go into asteroid fields and plant nuclear bombs inside the rocks. When alien ships came through, they would detonate all the bombs at once. It created a minefield that covered thousands of miles. Pete nodded. That was the Battle of Wolf 359. Commander Rick Stone commanded that operation. The aliens lost 30 ships in 10 minutes. They had never seen anything like it. He showed them another picture. This one showed a human cargo ship flying straight toward an alien battleship. This is from the Battle of Proxima Centauri, Pete said. Captain Linda Hayes had a damaged freighter full of supplies. When the aliens attacked, she turned her cargo ship into a guided missile. She aimed it at the alien flagship and activated the ship's emergency engines. Dr. Carter studied the picture. Did she survive? Barely, Pete said. She ejected in an escape pod at the last second. The freighter hit the alien ship and exploded. The alien battleship was cut in half. Danny Walsh looked at the pictures with respect. These captains were brave, but they were also smart. They used the aliens' expectations against them. Exactly, Pete said. The aliens expected us to fight their way. When we didn't, they couldn't adapt fast enough. They were too used to following rules and patterns. Tony played another alien message. Human tactics make no sense. They sacrifice valuable ships for small advantages. They attack when they should retreat. They retreat when they should attack. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't follow logic? Pete gathered up the pictures. By the end of the war, the aliens had learned to respect us. Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we were different. We thought outside the box. Amy looked thoughtful. Is that why the aliens are asking for our help now? Because we think differently? Partly, Dr. Carter said. But there's more to it. During the war, we showed them something they had never seen before. We showed them that sometimes the best way to win is to be willing to lose everything. Pete pulled out one last picture. It showed human and alien leaders signing a peace treaty. Both sides looked tired but relieved. The war ended not because one side won, but because both sides realized we were stronger together, Pete said. The aliens learned that humans could be trusted to keep their word, and we learned that not all aliens were our enemies. Captain Morrison had been quiet during the briefing. Now he spoke up. What you're telling me is that humans won the war by being unpredictable. Yes, sir, Pete said. But more than that. We won because we never gave up. Even when things looked hopeless, humans kept fighting. The aliens admired that. Lisa Parker looked at her engineering notes. The aliens have better technology than we do even now, but technology isn't everything. No, Jake agreed. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't expect. Amy checked her communication equipment. Captain, we're getting close. To the Zerion sector. I'm starting to pick up distress signals. Jake stood up. Thank you, Pete. Everyone back to your stations. We're about to find out if the lessons from the war still apply. As the officers left the briefing room, Pete stayed, behind with Jake. Captain, Pete said quietly, there's something else, something I didn't want to say in front of the others. Jake waited. During the war, we had one big advantage, Pete continued. We were fighting for our survival. Every human knew that if we lost, our species would be destroyed. That kind of motivation makes people do impossible things. And now? Jake asked. Pete looked out the window at the stars. Now we're fighting for people who used to be our enemies. People who called us animals and primitives. Will our crew fight as hard for aliens as they would for other humans? Jake thought about that for a moment. Then he smiled. Pete, that's exactly why we'll win. 20 years ago, we fought because we had to. Today, we're fighting because we choose to. That makes us stronger, not weaker. As Jake walked back to the bridge, he thought about the brave captains who had come before him. Susan Blake, Rick Stone, Linda Hayes, and dozens of others who had faced impossible odds and found a way to win. Soon, he would find out if he could do the same. The UES Titan flew on through the darkness, carrying Earth's hopes toward a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Behind them lay the lessons of the past. Ahead of them waited an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. But Captain Jake Morrison was not worried. He had something the Devourers didn't have. He had humans. The UES Titan slowed down as it reached the edge of the Xerion sector. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, looking at the main screen in shock. What he saw there made his blood run cold. Where there should have been stars and planets, there was mostly empty space. Whole solar systems had been stripped clean, leaving behind only dark, lifeless rocks floating in the void. Some planets were nothing but metal cores, their surfaces completely gone. Even the stars themselves looked dim and weak, as if something had been feeding on their light. Science Officer Maria Santos worked frantically at her station, scanning the devastation with the ship's sensors. Maria was a small woman with black hair and intelligent eyes. She had studied space science for 15 years, but she had never seen anything like this. "Captain," Maria said, her voice shaking, "the destruction is beyond anything in our records. Entire planets have been consumed down to their cores. The metal content in the space dust suggests that even the buildings and cities were eaten." Dr. Helen Carter joined Maria at the science station. She studied the readings with growing horror. "This isn't just conquest or destruction, it's consumption. Whatever did this literally ate everything." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez turned from her communication station. "Sir, I'm picking up a weak signal from the inner system. It's Admiral Patricia White of the Combined Alien Fleet." "Put her through," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and showed a tired-looking alien woman. Admiral White belonged to the Corvani Republic, with pale green skin and large eyes. During the war, she had been one of their smartest military commanders. Now she looked broken and defeated. "Captain Morrison," Admiral White said, "thank the stars you came. We have less than 50 ships left from 3 entire fleets." Commander Danny Walsh stepped forward. "Admiral, our records show that the combined alien fleets had over 1,000 ships. What happened to them?" Admiral White's face became grim. "The Devourers happened. Captain, nothing we tried worked. Our biggest weapons bounced off them like toys. Our smartest battle computers couldn't predict their movements. Our fastest ships couldn't escape them." Intelligence Officer Chris Johnson had been studying the tactical data coming from the alien survivors. Chris was young but brilliant, able to understand enemy patterns better than most experienced officers. "Admiral," Chris said, "can you show us what these Devourers actually look like?" The screen changed to show recorded battle footage. Jake and his crew watched in amazement and fear. The Devourers were not ships in any normal sense. They looked like giant metal insects, each one the size of a city. Their bodies were made of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Instead of weapons, they had huge mouths filled with spinning blades that could cut through anything. But the most terrifying thing was how many of them there were. The footage showed thousands of these creatures moving together like a swarm of hungry locusts. As they moved, they consumed everything in their path. Ships, asteroids, even space stations disappeared into their grinding mouths. "They don't fight, like anything we've ever seen," Admiral White continued. "They don't form battle lines or use tactics. They just swarm forward and eat everything. When we destroyed one, 2 more took its place." Maria Santos studied the creatures on the screen. "Admiral, how do they reproduce so quickly?" "They don't reproduce," came a new voice. The screen split to show General Vexander of the Braktar Empire. He was a massive warrior with red skin and scars covering his face. "They convert. Every ship they eat becomes part of them. Every planet they consume gives them materials to build more of themselves." Danny Walsh looked sick. "So they get stronger with every victory." "Exactly," General Vexander said. "My warriors are bred for combat. We know no fear. But these things, they feel nothing. No fear, no anger, no pain. You cannot intimidate them or make them retreat. They just keep coming." Dr. Carter had been thinking about what she heard. "General, you said they convert matter into more of themselves. How long does that process take?" "Hours," the general replied. "We watched them consume the industrial world of Kepler 186. Within 6 hours, the factories and cities had been turned into 50 new Devourers, Jake felt a chill run down his spine. An enemy that grew stronger with every battle was the worst kind of opponent. But there was something else bothering him. "Admiral White," Jake said, "during our war, your people were masters of psychological warfare. You could predict what humans would do and use it against us. Why didn't that work on the Devourers?" Admiral White looked embarrassed. "Because they think like machines, Captain. Pure logic and efficiency. They analyze a situation, choose the best solution, and execute it perfectly. There are no emotions to exploit, no pride to wound, no fear to create." Chris Johnson had been studying the tactical data. "Sir, I think I see the problem. The alien empires tried to fight the Devourers the same way they fought each other, with formation flying, coordinated attacks, and predictable strategies. The Devourers adapted to every tactic within minutes," General Vexander added. "Our battle computers said it was impossible, but these creatures learned faster than our machines could think." Maria Santos brought up a new display showing the path of destruction. "Captain, look at this pattern. The Devourers aren't moving randomly. They're heading toward the galactic core, consuming the most populated systems first." Lisa Parker had been quiet, studying the engineering data. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Devourer construction. They're incredibly efficient, but they have one weakness." Everyone turned to look at the chief engineer. "What weakness?" Jake asked. "They're too perfect," Lisa said. "Every Devourer is built exactly the same way. Same size, same capabilities, same behavior patterns. It's like they're all copies of the same design." Dr. Carter nodded slowly. "That makes sense. If they're converting matter using a standard template, they would all be identical." "But why is that a weakness?" Amy asked. Chris Johnson answered, "Because identical systems have identical vulnerabilities. If we can find a way to hurt one Devourer, we can hurt them all." Admiral White looked hopeful for the first time. "Do you have a plan, Captain?" Jake studied the data for a long moment. "Maybe, but first I need to understand something. Admiral, you said the Devourers think like machines, pure logic and efficiency." "Yes, that's correct." "Then they expect their enemies to think the same way," Jake continued. "They expect logical tactics and predictable strategies." Danny Walsh began to smile. "Just like the aliens expected during our war." "Exactly," Jake said. "The aliens couldn't predict human tactics because we don't always think logically. We use intuition, emotion, and creativity. The Devourers have the same blind spot." General Vexander looked confused. "Captain, are you suggesting that illogical tactics will work against them?" "I'm suggesting that unpredictable tactics will work," Jake corrected. "During our war, we won battles by doing things that made no sense to our enemies, things that their computers said were impossible or stupid." Maria Santos pulled up more data. "Captain, the Devourers have consumed 17 star systems in the past month. At their current rate, they'll reach the galactic core in 6 months." "And Earth?" Jake asked quietly. 2 years, Maria replied. The bridge was silent for a moment as everyone thought about that. 2 years before these creatures reached humanity's homeworld. Admiral White broke the silence. "Captain Morrison, our remaining ships are hiding in the asteroid field around Zarion Prime. The planet's population is evacuating, but there are still billions of people down there." "How long before the Devourers arrive?" Jake asked. 12 hours, General Vexander said grimly. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They were scared, but they were ready to fight. Amy Rodriguez was checking her communication systems. Danny Walsh was preparing the weapons. Lisa Parker was already thinking about modifications to their engines. Dr. Carter was studying everything she could about the enemy. These were humans. They didn't have the best technology or the biggest fleet, but they had something the Devourers had never faced before. They had chaos. "Admiral White, General Vexander," Jake said, "gather your remaining ships. We're going to make our stand at Zarion Prime." "Captain," Admiral White said carefully, "with respect, you have one ship against thousands of Devourers. Even with our help, the odds are impossible." Jake smiled, and for a moment he looked just like the human captains who had won the impossible battles of 20 years ago. "Admiral," he said, Impossible odds are where humans do their best work. The UES Titan changed course toward Xerion Prime, followed by the scattered remains of 3 alien fleets. Behind them, the Devourer swarm continued its relentless advance, consuming everything in its path. But for the first time since the nightmare began, the defenders had something they hadn't had before. They had hope. The UES Titan arrived at Xerion Prime, just as the dark swarm appeared on the edge of the solar system. Captain Jake Morrison watched through the main screen as thousands of Devourer creatures moved toward them like a black wave of death. Each one was the size of a city, with metal jaws that could eat planets. The alien survivors had gathered their remaining ships around the planet. Admiral Patricia White commanded what was left of the Corvani fleet, 15 ships that had once been part of a force of 300. General Vexander had 12 Braktar warships, all that remained of the galaxy's most feared military. Even Supreme Chancellor Mordak was there, leading the last 8 ships of the mighty Xerion Navy. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," Jake said into his communication device. "Form a defensive line around the planet. We need to buy time for the evacuation." "Captain," came Chancellor Mordak's voice, filled with desperation, "there are still 2 billion people on Xerion Prime. The evacuation ships can only take a few million." Jake felt his heart sink. No matter what they did today, billions would die. But he pushed that thought away. A good captain focused on who he could save, not who he couldn't. Chief Weapons Officer Alex Carter was busy at his station checking the Titan's massive guns. Alex was tall and thin, with steady hands and sharp eyes. He had trained for space combat his whole life. "Captain," Alex said, "our main weapons are ready. But sir, I've been studying the alien battle records. Their biggest guns barely scratched. These things." "Then we don't use their tactics," Jake replied. "Lisa, how are our engines?" Chief Engineer Lisa Parker looked up from her tablet. "All systems running at full power, Captain. I've also been working on something. Remember how you said the Devourers expect logical tactics?" "Yes." "Well, what if we gave them something completely illogical?" Lisa grinned. "I've been modifying our nuclear missiles. Instead of trying to damage the Devourers, I've programmed them to broadcast false energy signatures." Dr. Helen Carter looked interested. "What kind of false signatures?" "Fake ships," Lisa explained. "The missiles will make the Devourers think there are hundreds of human ships where there are actually none. They'll waste time and energy attacking empty space." Commander Danny Walsh nodded approvingly. "Deception and misdirection. Classic human tactics." Amy Rodriguez suddenly called out from her station. "Captain, the Devourers are changing course. They're heading straight for us." On the screen, the black swarm was moving faster now. The creatures didn't fly in formations like normal ships. They moved like insects, some flying high, others low, all of them hungry and relentless. "All ships prepare for battle," Jake ordered. "Remember, these things expect us to fight like the aliens did. They've adapted to every logical strategy, so we're going to be completely illogical." The alien commanders sounded confused over the radio. "Captain Morrison," Admiral White said, "what do you mean by illogical?" "Watch and learn," Jake said. Then he turned to his crew. "Lisa, launch your false signature missiles. Amy, start broadcasting music on all frequencies." "Music, sir?" Amy asked. "The loudest, most annoying human music you can find," Jake confirmed. "These things are used to military communications. Let's give them something they've never heard before." As the Devourers got closer, the space around Xerion Prime filled with chaos. Lisa's missiles spread out and began broadcasting false signals, making it look like there were hundreds of ships instead of just 40. Amy's music filled the radio waves. Loud rock and roll, jazz, and even children's songs. Intelligence officer Chris Johnson was monitoring the Devourer communications. "Captain, they're slowing down. Their formation is breaking up. I think they're confused by all the false signals." "Good," Jake said. "Alex, target the lead Devourer, but don't aim for center mass." "Where should I aim, sir?" "Aim for its mouth," Jake said. "If these things eat everything, their mouths must be important." The UES Titan's main guns fired. sending massive energy beams toward the closest devourer. The shots hit the creature's grinding jaws, causing sparks and metal fragments to fly everywhere. The devourer slowed down, its mouth making strange grinding noises. Direct hit, Alex reported. The creature's consumption mechanism is damaged. General Vexander's voice came over the radio, filled with amazement. Impossible. How did you know to target the mouth? Because that's what makes them dangerous, Jake replied. Take away their ability to eat and they're just big metal bugs. The alien ships began copying the human tactics, aiming for the devourers' mouths instead of their armored bodies. Several creatures were disabled, floating helplessly with broken jaws. But there were still thousands more coming. Captain? Maria, Santos called out. The main swarm will reach us in 10 minutes. Even with our new tactics, we can't stop them all. Jake studied the tactical display. The false signals were helping, but the devourers were starting to adapt. Soon they would figure out which signals were real and which were fake. Lisa, Jake said, how long would it take to overload our gravity drive? Lisa looked shocked. Sir, if we overload the gravity drive, it will create a massive space distortion. It could destroy everything within 1,000 miles. Including us. Yes, sir. Danny Walsh stepped closer. Captain, you're not thinking of ramming the swarm? Not ramming, Jake said. Something better. Lisa, can you program the gravity drive to create a false gravity well? Something that would make the devourers think there's a planet where there isn't one? Lisa's eyes lit up with understanding. You want to trick them into trying to eat empty space. Exactly. These creatures are programmed to consume matter. If we make them think there's a huge source of matter in empty space, they'll all converge on that spot. And then what? Amy asked. Then we give them what they're really hungry for, Jake said with a grim smile. Dr. Carter, you said the devourers convert matter into more of themselves. What would happen if we fed them corrupted data instead of clean matter? Dr. Carter thought for a moment. Theoretically, it would be like giving them poison. The corrupted information would spread through their network, causing system failures. Chris Johnson was already working on his computer. Captain, I can create a virus designed specifically for their conversion process, but I'd need to get it directly into their network. How close would we need to get? Jake asked. Very close, sir. Close enough to physically connect to one of them. The bridge was quiet for a moment as everyone realized what Jake was planning. Captain, Danny said quietly, you're talking about flying the Titan directly into the swarm. Not just into the swarm, Jake corrected. Into the heart of it. These creatures think like a hive mind, hit the center and the whole network goes down. Amy looked scared but determined. Sir, what are our chances of survival? Honestly, Jake said, pretty much zero. But our chances of saving the galaxy go up to about 50%. Admiral White's voice came over the radio. Captain Morrison, we're detecting massive energy readings from your ship. What are you doing? Something the Devourers will never expect, Jake replied. All alien ships fall back to the planet's surface. Protect the evacuation ships. Captain, we will not abandon you, General Vexander said firmly. You're not abandoning us, Jake said. You're giving us room to work. Lisa had finished her modifications. Captain, the gravity drive is ready. I've also loaded Chris's virus into our main computer core. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We're about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We're going to fly directly into the enemy swarm and deploy a computer virus that should disable their entire network. He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. I won't lie to you, this is probably a suicide mission. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the escape pods can do so now. No one moved. Amy Rodriguez checked her communication equipment one more time. Danny Walsh prepared the tactical systems. Lisa Parker made final adjustments to the engines. Dr. Carter and Chris Johnson worked together on the virus deployment system. Alex Carter kept his weapons ready. Proud to serve with you all, Jake said quietly. The UES Titan turned toward the center of the Devourer swarm and began to accelerate. Behind them, the alien ships moved to protect the evacuation vessels. Ahead of them, Thousands of hungry metal creatures waited. "Lisa, activate the false gravity well," Jake ordered. Space in front of them suddenly warped and twisted. The Devourers, sensing what they thought was a massive planet full of matter to consume, changed course and swarmed toward the false signal. "It's working," Chris reported. "They're all converging on the gravity well." "Now comes the hard part," Jake said. "Take us into the center of the swarm." The Titan flew straight into the mass of Devourer creatures. The ship shook as metal jaws snapped at them from all sides. Sparks flew as claws scraped against their armor. "Deploying virus," Chris announced. The ship's computer core opened, sending streams of corrupted data directly into the nearest Devourer's systems. The creature convulsed as the virus spread through its network, then to the next creature, then to the next. "It's working," Amy shouted. "The Devourers are shutting down." All around them, the massive creatures began to stop moving. Their eyes went dark. Their jaws stopped grinding. One by one, they became lifeless metal hulks floating in space. But the virus had one more effect that no one expected. As the Devourers shut, 3 months after the Battle of Xerion Prime, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Great Council Chamber on the space station Harmony 1. The station was new, built by all the galactic species working together. Its name said everything about how the galaxy had changed. The council chamber was enormous, with seats for representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Today, it was packed. Aliens who had once been bitter enemies sat side by side, united by their shared experience of almost losing everything. Jake wore his best uniform, the one with all his medals. Next to him stood his crew from the UES Titan. Amy Rodriguez had been promoted to commander and now served as Earth's chief communications officer with the alien worlds. Danny Walsh was Admiral Walsh now, in charge of training alien officers in human military tactics. Lisa Parker had become the head of the new Galactic Defense Engineering Corps. Supreme Chancellor Mordak of the Xerion Dominion walked to the center of the chamber. The proud alien leader looked very different than he had during the war 20 years ago. His golden robes were simpler now, and his eyes showed respect instead of arrogance. "Citizens of the galaxy," Mordak began, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. 3 months ago, we faced the end of all life as we know it. The Devourers had consumed 17 star systems and were heading for the galactic core. Our combined fleets, with all their advanced technology and superior firepower, had failed completely. He paused and looked directly at Jake. Then one human ship arrived. One ship, with a crew that thought differently than we did. They succeeded where we had failed. Not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they were willing to do what we could not imagine. Admiral Patricia White of the Corvani Republic stood up. "The humans saved us all. But more than that, they showed us a new way to think about problems. Captain Morrison, would you please address the council?" Jake walked to the center of the chamber. He felt nervous speaking to so many important people, but he remembered his crew and their sacrifice. That gave him strength. "Thank you, Admiral White," Jake said. 3 months ago, my crew and I did what any humans would do when innocent people were in danger. We helped. It didn't matter that some of you had been our enemies. It didn't matter that the odds were impossible. What mattered was that people needed help. General Vexander of the Braktar Empire stood up. The massive warrior's voice was respectful. "Captain Morrison, my people have studied your tactics in the battle. We do not understand how you knew to target the Devourer's consumption mechanisms. Our computer model said it was the least effective strategy." Jake smiled. "General, that's exactly why it worked. Your computers were thinking logically. But sometimes the best solution is the one that doesn't make logical sense. During our war 20 years ago, we learned that the most dangerous enemy is one that thinks differently than you do." Dr. Helen Carter, who now served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Science Council, stepped forward. The Devourers were defeated because they could only think one way. They expected logical tactics and predictable strategies. When we gave them chaos and unpredictability, they couldn't adapt fast enough. An alien from the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacle. "Dr. Carter, our scientists have been studying the virus that destroyed the Devourer network. How did your people create something so effective so quickly? Intelligence Officer Chris Johnson, now a full colonel, answered. We didn't create it quickly. We created it differently. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourers, we tried to confuse them. We fed them false information that made their own systems turn against them. Amy Rodriguez activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it was now. Where there had once been empty space and consumed worlds, new stars were shining. The matter that the Devourers had absorbed was slowly reforming into planets and systems. The restoration process is still ongoing, Amy explained. Billions of people who we thought were dead have been found alive in the released matter. Entire cities and fleets that were consumed have been recovered intact. A small alien child in the audience raised her hand. Captain Morrison, why did the humans help us when we had been mean to you before? Jake knelt down so he was at the child's level. Because that's what friends do. They help each other even when it's hard. Even when they've had fights before. Chancellor Mordak spoke again. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously on a new proposal. We request that Earth take leadership of the new Galactic Defense Force. Not as conquerors, but as protectors. Jake looked surprised. Chancellor, we appreciate the honor, but humans don't want to rule over other species. We're not asking you to rule, Admiral White said. We're asking you to teach. To show us how to think creatively and work together when facing the impossible. Lisa Parker stepped forward. The new defense force will be different from anything the galaxy has seen before. Mixed crews with humans and aliens working together. Combined technologies that use both human creativity and alien precision. Training programs that teach unconventional thinking alongside traditional tactics. General Vexander nodded. My finest warriors are already studying at the New Human Tactical Academy. They are learning that true strength comes not from following rules, but from knowing when to break them. An elderly alien scientist stood up. Captain Morrison, my species has been spacefaring for 10,000 years. We thought we knew everything about warfare and technology. But you humans taught us that experience means nothing if you're not willing to learn new ways of thinking. Jake looked around the chamber at all the different species. Aliens who had once tried to destroy humanity now looked to humans for guidance and protection. But it wasn't about power or revenge. It was about building something better together. The galaxy is safer now than it's been in 1,000,000 years, Jake said. Not because we destroyed our enemies, but because we turned them into friends. The Devourers are gone. But more importantly, we've learned to work together. Dr. Carter pulled up another display showing new exploration ships leaving Earth. Humanity is sharing our exploration techniques with our alien partners. We're teaching them that the best discoveries come from taking risks and trying new approaches. Danny Walsh addressed the military representatives. The new combined fleets use tactics that no single species could have developed alone. Human unpredictability, Corvani precision, Zerion firepower, and Braktar courage working as one force. A young alien officer asked, Admiral Walsh, what happens if we face another threat like the Devourers? Danny smiled. Then we'll face it together. And we'll find a solution that none of us could have found alone. That's what makes us stronger now than we were before. Chancellor Mordak called for the formal vote. All in favor of the new Galactic Alliance with Earth as the lead coordinator of defense and exploration. Every hand, tentacle, claw, and appendage in the chamber rose up. The vote was unanimous. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. 3 months ago, humanity had been alone in the galaxy, respected but separate. Now they were part of something bigger, something better. Amy Rodriguez activated the communication system to broadcast Jake's final words to every world in the galaxy. Citizens of the galaxy, Jake said. Today we start a new chapter. Not as separate species competing with each other, but as one galactic family working together. We've learned that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. He paused and looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's windows. The universe is big and full of dangers we haven't discovered yet, but we don't face them alone anymore. We face them together, and together we can overcome anything. The council chamber erupted in cheers and applause from dozens of different species, all celebrating the same thing: hope for the future. Later that day, Jake stood on the observation deck of Harmony 1 with his original crew. The UES Titan was visible in the distance, being refitted with new technology that combined human and alien engineering. "So what's next, Captain?" Amy asked. Jake watched as ships from all over the galaxy docked at the station, bringing supplies, people, and new ideas. Human ships worked alongside alien vessels, their crews learning from each other. "Next we explore," Jake said. "Together, we find new worlds, meet new species, and maybe discover new friends. And if we run into trouble, we'll face it the same way we face the Devourers." "How's that?" Lisa asked. Jake smiled as he watched a human child and an alien child playing together in the station's gardens. Together, and with human stubbornness. The galaxy had learned something important. Sometimes the best weapon against impossible odds isn't technology or firepower. Sometimes it's hope, creativity, and the refusal to give up on doing what's right. And humanity had plenty of all three.